Well, okay, so this is actually an interesting part of the conversation, and it's okay if we're recording this. I am a person who, for a variety of reasons, like I'm a caller. Like I'm a person who calls, and most of my sort of, I guess I'm officially like a Gen X human being, but people who are millennials or Gen Z or whatever, they sort of freak out if you just cold call somebody.
Yeah, it's like walking up to someone's door and just knocking. It's like weird. Like you didn't check.
Well, we used to do that too. We used to be able to just rock up to someone's house and veg out on the couch for
Yeah.
hours on end,
Yeah.
watching TV, talking to their parents and shit. But now we grew up.
But this whole thing of like, oh, I'm going to text you, or somebody's sending an email and then they send a text and it's like, oh, we're going to schedule a call and there's an email and then there's a text and then they DM you on Instagram and I can't like fucking find the
Mm.
fucking chain. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Just like call me on the goddamn phone, bitch.
Yes. No, I get it. I get it. See, my problem is that no one is calling me. If I leave the house and my phone rings, it's either spam calls
Yeah.
Mm.
or my parents.
I understand the need to not pick up the phone when your parents call. I do understand that.
I love them, but no, just leave me
Yeah,
alone.
no, 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 of course. No. I'm not, it's just the associated trauma of a parental phone call is sometimes not worth it. Anyway.
Yes.
Well, for me, it's the spam. For me, it's just every time my phone rings, it's never for me.
Yeah.
It's always because my name's on some sort of list. And so, like, even if it's a phone call coming in, like, unless it's from like a New York area code, because like I got my cell phone when I was in college. So if it's my college area code, I know it's spam.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like I just ignore my phone and I check it once a day for voicemail.
Well, where did you go to college?
Northwestern, go Cats.
Oh, is you in Chicago? What's the Chicago area code?
Well, it's Evanston, just north, so it's suburban Chicago, 847.
So whenever you get 847, you know it's spam. It's bullshit, right? Yeah, I won't pick up the phone unless I know it's a person that I know. And if it's a random number, I'll just like click it off. My wife, for example, she likes to text, but she doesn't just like to text like we're having dinner at 6:30, meet me at the restaurant, or she likes to text like,
Conversation.
yeah, like, and sort of important things. Texting is the worst form of communication when subtlety is required, because you have no tone.
That's what emojis are supposed to solve, right? The idea of tone.
And they sort of do, but I mean, I actually feel like my mom or my dad when I over emoji, on a text. It's like, so to me, it's just like, if you want to have a serious conversation about anything, like pick up the goddamn phone.
Amen.
If you need to like say like, oh, I'm going to meet you at the movie theater at 6:30, fine, text me, whatever. But don't like give me a dissertation about your emotional state of life on a text. That's to me is like the cardinal sin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's also just horrible for me just because, like, I got calloused hands. So it's like I always misspell. And then so I had to turn off my autocorrect because the autocorrect actually made it less intelligible than my misspelled hands could.
Yep.
I know. And then like my brother is like a sort of a slightly nerdy, he's like an intellectual who like lift weights and drives a pickup truck.
Is he single?
Nice.
Sorry.
No, he's no, it's
God.
very
That was
two
so
kids.
shameless.
But he's a great guy, but anyway, let's not get into that. But it's like if I misspell something on a text, he calls me out on it, and I'm like, no, it's fucking autocorrect. It's not my fucking fault. Like I don't know. The whole thing is so you're just doomed. I mean, texting is like unless it is purely informational, you're doomed to failure. There's no upside to it, if you ask me.
Uh, I'd say there is an upside. I mean, because we don't have people who write letters anymore.
Well, there's that.
Like the fact that we're teaching a generation to communicate through text and have their own sort of language and deal with that. I like that kids are writing letters again, even if it's just texting.
Yes, I'll give you that. At least it does inspire whatever Gen Z people who might otherwise not write anything ever. It does inspire them to actually be able to put a sentence together in a grammatically correct way. That is something. I'll give you that for sure. But I'm just saying, if they, but in my, just in my life, like whenever I get a text, almost, whenever I get a text from a family member or, or somebody that I actually really care about, it just gives me deep anxiety.
Yep, I get that.
It's like so much modern communication just gives me anxiety. It's just because I'm getting called 20 times a day.
Yeah.
It's political season here, so I get called 20 times a day. And it's like none of this is for me. You're just throwing sound into the world and hoping someone picks it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyways, we have digressed even before the episode has started.
We haven't even started
The
yet.
train is well and truly off the tracks, but I can use a lot of that anyways, and I'm so sorry about that. It's literally slipped out of my mouth, but I'll have to put that in the episode because that is a hilarious moment. That
What? Oh, you were trying to like get a date with my brother? I mean, I don't know.
I was just curious. That's
Come
all.
on.
Hey,
Yeah.
stay up late, things happen, mate. I don't know, you know.
Shoot your shot. That's how things happen. You're right.
It's a force of habit. It really is. Anyways, look, he could have said he was a garbage truck driver and he lifted weights, and I would have said he's single. And it's the fact that it's anybody. Anyways, I'm getting well into this. I am recording.
Okay.
In 5, 4, 3. Oh God, hang on. I just want to say, after all that, then this script now is just going to be so much awkwarder than it could have been. In 5, 4, 3.
Welcome to the Blooming League of Original Podcasts.
G'day and welcome to an extra psychotic edition of Thrash and Treasure, the Torture Chamber musical comedy podcast that tastes only slightly better than cheap, horrible wine. And speaking of cheap whore, I'm Aaron, and I'm joined as usual by the funniest man I know. And no, he ain't Robin Williams, but he is Robin our hearts. It's Mr. J-Wags. How's it going?
Oh, hello. Thank you, Aaron, for that lovely introduction. I will take funniest living person from Robin Williams, though. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I'll say you've also got a bit of Jack Nicholson about you, so it doesn't surprise me you did that whole Shining play.
It's the eyebrows. It's the eyebrows I get taken for many jacks when in public.
I know, it's just a quick update for listeners about like my whole spine thing, and I was talking last week about going to get the x-ray. I still haven't got my x-ray on my back. However, I got my blood test back, and surprise, surprise, the man who does a podcast with people in America and interviews people from America is deficient in vitamin D. I'm so surprised. So everything else is fine though. Like somehow I drink so much coffee and so much Coca-Cola. I'm so surprised they weren't just like, dude, your blood is just all sugar, but it's not. Apparently it's fine, and my hemoglobin is fine, and my thyroid is fine, which I think is overactive, but whatever.
Let's get you a grow lamp and get you some of that vitamin D back, man. Got to get out there.
What is vitamin D? I don't even know what it. I mean, is there?
It's the sun. It's when the sun hits your skin, it creates vitamin D out of your skin. So it's like you can supplement it, or you can just go outside for 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
All right. So you're in Melbourne. Presumably there's sunshine on occasion. Yes.
Our ozone layer in Australia, because where Antarctica is, the sun has reflected off Antarctica and burnt a hole in our ozone layer. So we don't have that much protection when it comes to natural atmospheric protection from the sun. But at the moment it is winter, so it has been quite drab and cold. But you know, we get the sun. It's too bloody hot. I don't want to go outside in the heat. But I do.
Right.
I do when I have to.
Don't start with me. I had to go to Palm Springs 2 weeks ago because they were doing a production of Alice by Heart, this other show that I wrote, and it was 124 degrees.
Oh shit! What's that in Celsius? It's too much.
I mean, it's dry heat. It's not as bad as like New York, but I mean, it was like you'd walk outside, you're like, oh, I'm in a sauna.
51 degrees Celsius, fuck right off.
Yeah.
No way in hell. Now, I've been to Bora Bora. Everyone got sunburned because that was like literally just like sitting in an oven. That was horrible that day. I hated it.
Yeah.
And it was Bora Bora. It was like paradise. And I was sitting there like, fucking hate this place.
It should be the nicest place in the world, right?
It should be.
I am wondering when equity is going to get involved with some of these outdoor summer theaters, because it's just like, at what point is it too hot to let people perform? Because I worked out in Utah, Southwest Utah, for a couple seasons at Tuacahn, and wow, we start the show after sundown and it is still 100 degrees on stage.
Yeah, it's not cool. I mean, it's actually that's like really not cool, like on so many levels, because you have to like, you're performing in front of people and it's 100 degrees and you have to sing and you're sweating in your clothes, and it's just like, it's like not okay, actually.
Yeah.
Anyways, Duncan, I'm going to quickly introduce you. So, Jonathan, guess what?
What?
We have another returning legendary diva in our Whisper House tonight. But everyone, everywhere, all at once, don't bite your tongue until day breaks. Just play your part and howl at the phantom moon with a great Aussie g'day. And even though I'm barely breathing, now we sing Hey Casanova to this idle teen turned teen idol. Plus, lo and behold, genius Mr. Chess, whose smooth vocals leave us immersed in such reveries with varying degrees of con artistry. Because this icon artistry turns to our torture chamber with our mouth on fire, ready for some more claptrap chat. So in this chateau full of riches, we rise from our winter napping for a spring awakening with this American psycho composer, because he's not a common man, but he are what he wear, and what he wears is chic, because he's Mr. Duncan Sheik. Yay, welcome to the torture chamber, even though we've been chatting for 10 minutes anyways. Welcome back to the show.
Aaron, yeah, I forget. It's been, when was the last time we talked? It was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I forgot that you do these very, very protracted and complicated and incredibly well-researched deep dives in your introductions. So thank you for that. I guess I will say.
That was a much shorter one than last time, because when people come back, I'm not doing another 8, 9, 10 page one. You get up to 5 pages, up to 5. That's what you get. So it's purely because we've already done it. If you want to hear the full introduction, people, go and listen to the episode. It was episode 69, and we did actually Alice by Heart juxtapose with Alice Cooper. So it was some hot Alice on Alice action.
Nice.
But today we've got some hot Psycho on Psycho action.
Psycho on Psychos. Well, so Aaron, just so you know, well, I think you do know this, but after we talked last time, I did spend about 5 weeks in Australia. I was in Sydney because I have family in Adelaide, and then I was in Perth for 3 weeks, or officially Mandaring, which is like sort of like, you know, a little bit inside. That was one of the coolest trips of my life. I'm a big Australia fan now.
Yep, awesome. I know you watched Mad Max recently.
I did.
Furiosa was great.
Oh, sorry, Furiosa.
Yeah, no, I saw Furiosa. Actually, I thought it was great. You know, I mean, you can go in with fairly low expectations and you just want to be entertained. You know, it's a great movie.
Where I am now, I have to show you like a picture on the map. Literally 5 minutes away from me, a 5-minute drive, is where they shot Mad Max, the original Road Warrior.
Yeah.
And you can even see, like, when you compare the screenshot with like Google Street View, it's all still there. When I was a kid, my brother and I, when I was like 4, we used to go take the dogs down there rabbiting because there was just thousands of rabbits there. And yeah, it was like my childhood was around that area. And
so when you go rabbiting, does that mean you like shoot the rabbits and eat them?
We let the dogs chase the rabbits. That's what it was. I apologize, you are a Buddhist. I was young. I had no choice.
No, I don't. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm just, I am Buddhist. But I, you know, I hate to say it, but if it's the right cook, I'll eat a rabbit any day of the week.
Yeah. I don't think the dogs that ever caught any. We had whippets. And so they would just run through the field.
I see. What do you call them? Whippets?
Whippets, yeah.
Like tiny greyhounds that sort of act like cats. They're like small, nervous dogs.
Oh, right. Okay. It's not like something that's like inside of whipped cream.
That's a whiffet, isn't it?
Whippet. Yeah.
Is that whiffets?
Whippets.
I have no idea.
Nitrous oxide. It's like what the dentist.
I'm with you, Duncan.
It's what the dentist gives you, like, you know, to sort of chill you out. But, you know, you can do it recreationally. It's the world's shortest high.
Basically, yeah, in the 70s and the 80s, Aaron, in America, a kid figured out that if you hit like a Ready Whip can, right at the beginning, there's a little zap of gas. And if you snort that gas, you get high for 2 seconds.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
That's what we did.
Ready Whip ain't that big here.
It was definitely a very mid 80s. You know, I can't really listen to the Smiths without having like a sort of like a Ready Whip flashback.
Never expect to hear that sentence ever in my life.
Can only imagine Morrissey with a cherry on top now.
He's lost his mind. I feel really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm such a fan, and I feel really bad. Like he's Maybe he'll come back to us.
Just to get this question out there, who's a person who you love so much if you found out they were like a creep or a weirdo or like a criminal and you'd be utterly destroyed? Like for me, it's Hayao Miyazaki, the guy who makes all those lovely like Japanese films about children and childhood. Like if he were to end up to be like a psycho murderer, I don't know how I could handle that because his art is so personal and lovely to me.
Yeah.
Who's an artist who's like, you would just, you couldn't take it if you found out they were a horrible human?
Okay, so I hate to, this is going to really sound like a humble brag. I actually have an actual painting of his, which it's a long story, but
That's not a humble, that's a brag. Like, yeah, brag about that shit.
my daughter's 5.5 now, and he painted this picture, which is exactly like Inez. And so I have one in my dining room. So yeah, I'm a huge fan just because I was, happened to have one in my house. And then, they gave us the book as well. So I sort of like got into the whole thing. But so I do have a funny story to tell you about Japanese artists. I'm sorry, Aaron, I'm digressing so much today. Is that okay?
That's fine.
So in 2009, I was at the Venice Biennale. I was dating this girl who was sort of vaguely involved in the art world. I had broken up with the person who is now currently my wife, but we were on a hiatus. We were like at the Biennale, and there's that Japanese artist, like he does like collaborations with like Louis Vuitton, and he has the same name as the writer, Murakami, I think. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Not offhand, I don't.
Anyway, he does these sort of big sculptures, and they're sort of like anime, but they're very sexually provocative. And there was this huge sculpture of like this girl with huge tits, and like the milk was sort of like coming out of her tits, like this sort of anime character. I don't know, some iteration of that, right? And like I walk in there, and I'm like, what? Like, that's quite a thing. Like I was in there with my girlfriend at the time, and right behind me was like these two like sort of very conservative Italian parents came in with like their 5-year-old son.
Oh no.
They're Italian. Like, have they seen their own art? Boobies are everywhere in Italian art.
Yeah.
Like,
And willies.
Yeah, no, I'll give the Italians that. They don't get too moralistic about things, generally. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Italy and before Australia, the Olympics are on at the moment. Go Australia! So where in the world is the most inspiring spot for you?
Well, I have a few places, but they tend to all be Mediterranean. Although I just mentioned that when I went to Australia, it became my new favorite place. But prior to that, I would say various weird secret islands in Greece. Certain parts of the south of France, Cap d'Aille in particular, was one of my favorite places. Or there's a place called Ez where like Bono and Edge have houses there. It's pretty fancy, but it's beautiful. And I do like the Adriatic, so the sort of eastern side of Italy, and then, like Croatia, even like Albania now apparently is like really cool. Like I actually really want to go back. I haven't been there in a while, but I really want to go back to the Adriatic. I love that part of the world.
Well, what is it about the Adriatic Mediterranean that makes is it a vibe? Is it just specifically?
Yeah, it's energetic. There's a funny thing about Greece. Obviously, you do theater as well. So whenever I've been in Greece, there is this weird thing where it's like you understand, like, oh, this is like the birth of theater. It's really the birthplace of theater. I've been in these amphitheaters, that whatever, they were built, maybe 3,000 years ago. And there's something about it that's like you just hear the echoes of the voices of those people who were there doing Euripides or, whatever the hell they were doing 3,000 years ago. So, to me, that's very powerful and sort of moving in a way.
Yeah. And that's funny because you got dragged into musicals and hate musicals. So
I hated musicals for a period of time in my life.
Hated. Sorry.
But it was more because musicals weren't sort of like giving me what I wanted, let's say in the 70s and the 80s. And then it did change, and it has changed. I will say that I prefer going to straight plays than going to musicals for the most part. But there are definitely musicals that I am excited to see, and some things that I've been very pleasantly surprised with. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is that I think we talked about this before. I was in the chorus of Annie when I was in third grade. I was Gonzo in the Muppet musical in fourth grade. I did Barnum in fifth grade, but it was sort of a bit part. And then I was the Artful Dodger in Oliver in sixth grade. So I have like a history of being like a musical theater performer, for lack of a better word. What did you think about the opening ceremony?
Oh, I loved every minute because it was campus tits and it pissed people off.
Yeah, it was so I mean, it was almost as if the French were making fun of themselves. It was like amazing in that regard. It was just like, oh, like how over the top, ridiculously French can you possibly be? And then they just did it like times 10.
Yep. And they had Les Mis
Yeah, I know.
and
I don't
Gojira.
know. That whole sequence, I was like, oh, I cannot believe, like, I can't believe that I'm like watching this, and there's like the fucking like thing, the explosions going off, and he's like with his like Jackson like flying V, whatever. What band was that? Do you know what band it was?
It was Gojira. I don't know who they are.
It's got your okay,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, look, they're a good band. Okay, no, I don't, not no disrespect, but it's just like the whole thing was so absurd. Like, but then they cut from there, and the guy who's like doing parkour with the flame, and then he's like running into the library, and then it cuts to like I don't know if it was like John Adams or like Steve Reich or some minimalist sort of composer thing, and it's just like. Yeah, okay, let's just go from Les Mis to metal to John Adams to Celine Dion. Who gives a fuck? There's no theme here. Let's.
Yeah.
France. That's the theme.
Wonderful. But that Les Mis and Gojira thing, that was made for us. That was made for us. Like
I guess no, really, like you should have been the announcers for that particular portion of the opening ceremony.
I know, right? But I was like, I milked that for all it was worth. I'm on Twitter straight away, like, make sure to listen to our show.
What trends in musical theater are heartening you right now? What getting away from like the 80s popra mega musical sound to now? What's changed that's really impressed you?
So, I mean, I'm going to be a little bit sort of vaguely nepotistic, but like David Yazbek is a good friend of mine. And when I saw the band's visit, I was like, oh, yeah, like, there you go. That's it. That's the thing that I want to see. It's like really interesting, thoughtful music with a really great narrative, funny, heart-wrenching, and complex. To me, that's the sweet spot, but that's hard to pull off. Very hard.
Yeah.
I walk out of my own musicals often.
Because you know what's going to happen, or
Like, if it's not going well, I won't stay for the second act.
We're going to know now. From now on, people are going to know if you're not in your seat for Act 2, they're going to know why, Duncan. You have just outed yourself.
It has definitely happened where like Jen Damiano or Christina Alabato or like, any number of people are like, Duncan, like, did you not stay for the second act? I'm like, no, sorry.
what happens in the theater? Like, is the audience not liking it? Did an actor mess up and you're like, oh, fuck this, and just walked out? Like, what caused you to leave? I need to know the impetus.
No. I just, this is a very, very high class problem, obviously. Like when you've seen Spring Awakening like 450 times, like, and it sort of gets to whispering, and I'm just like, all right, Leah, sing it. I'll see you afterwards. I don't know. Like, I don't need to go hear it again.
Well, it's like, so you have skips on your own shows at this point.
Yes, I do. Absolutely, I do.
All right. That is a wonderful problem to have, that your music is so popular and so out there that you've had the opportunity to see your music performed live hundreds of times.
And also to walk out in the middle of
Yeah.
it. Just be like, you know what? It's not working for me tonight.
But it'll be here tomorrow, and that is a wonderful thing to be able to say. Like, this will be here tomorrow. I'll come back into this theater with my show.
It's more like I respect the actors and the people involved in the production so much and so deeply, and I love them so much. It's more like a self-deprecating thing where I'm just like, ugh, like I don't really, that song wasn't my best work, and then I'm just like, I'm out. It's more about that, in a way, so.
So, all right, we're going to move on the show. So, just quickly, you've been fiddling around in workshops for Nero. Any news you're able to share? Will it make it to the West End?
So, since we last talked, I was doing Secret Life of Bees at the Almeida in London.
Yeah.
And sort of simultaneously, I was doing double duty with some Nero workshops, which, were really cool. And we had some very amazing, talented actors who were involved in it. And there's a possibility that the Almeida may want to do it like next year, next season, but it's tricky. Look, it's a musical, right? But it's Nero. So, I mean, it's possibly the darkest narrative that's,
From the man who wrote American Psycho is telling us this is the darkest narrative he's ever done.
No, Nero makes American Psycho look like Oklahoma. I mean, Nero, it's way darker.
Did you see the most recent Oklahoma? That was pretty dark.
Yeah, so the problem is this. All right, so my friend John Rando just directed Back to the Future, which has been a big hit on Broadway. It's been a big hit on the West End. I liked the movie and I love John. He's an amazing director. And at some point I will go see the show. I'll bring my daughter and I'll go see the show. It's not the kind of thing that I would normally go to, right? It's not my sort of, it's just not my...
Like your kettle of fish.
Not my kettle of fish, right? But I'll go see it, and I'm sure there's a lot of great things about it. And when the time comes, I'll be excited about it. But like Nero is like, it's the opposite of Back to the Future. It's like, Nero was a person who not only his mother sort of slept her way to the top of Roman society and then murdered her husband and then basically had the husband's two children sort of like banished so that she could put her son Nero on the throne, who she was fucking. And then ultimately, like when Nero became more powerful than she wanted him to be, like he sent her to a villa in Antioch and had the sailors murder her with oars, and throw her in the ocean. So it's like matricide and incest and just the darkest aspects of the human condition, but in a musical.
So you could have called it Once Upon a Matricide.
We could.
Oh my God, that's what the episode's going to be called.
Sorry for the pun.
No, that was great.
Sorry for the pun. I had to take the shot.
That was great. Well, anyway, it's going to be a long episode this week, so we're going to quickly go to an ad break, and we'll be back after this. From the producers of Thrash and Treasure, around the world in 80 plays, starring the adorable Lizzie B and Alfie Parker, and featuring the star of the show, Dolly the dog, they'll take you for a trip around the UK, exploring the rich arts and cultural history. But here is a sneak peek.
Howdy! Welcome back to Around the World in 80 Plays. I'm Lizzie B and that...
Alfie Parker.
And we're joined, as always, by the winner of Pup Idol, Dolly the dog. Woof, woof. This week, Alfie leapt over to Dublin for the 11th stop of the Sister Act UK and Ireland tour, while I can now be found back in London at the Dominion Theatre for Sister Act the Musical's heavenly return to the West End stage. Because I have actually started rehearsals now. Who would have thought? Very exciting.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Felt like a lifetime away, and then all of a sudden, here I am. But yeah, all good. If this is your first time joining us, we're exploring the UK and Ireland's wonderful arts history and culture as we make our way from city to city with Sister Act the Musical, or at least that's what our producer tells us to say. How's the week been for you, Alfie?
Yeah, very nice, thank you. Back in Dublin. Dublin's nice. I always like Dublin. This week's been good. Back at the Bord Gosh. The theatre is lovely. We'll talk about that later. And yeah, back on the road, kind of getting used to it, getting the swing of it. Flying now and technically international. Whoa. So a bit of a superstar here.
You're a bit grown up being on tour without me as well, aren't you?
Yeah, you know me. Just kind of just a big grown up, big boy, really.
What did you do when I wasn't there to pack your bags?
Cry.
Yeah, I thought so. So, has anything exciting happened since our last episode?
Since our last episode, what's happened? Well, we have Ruth Jones officially on the stage. Now that is exciting. And Ruth's absolutely smashing it. She's great. And every show she's kind of adding bits and finding bits and putting her own spin on it, which is great. So it's lovely to have Ruth there. We're playing Traitors at work, which is intense but very fun. I'm still alive. For how much longer, we'll find out. But I'm still in. There's about 500 dressing rooms at the theatre, so everyone's got their own. That's nice. I won't let you know if I am a traitor or a faithful. You'll have to find out.
You can let us know at the end.
I'll let you know when it's finished. That'll probably be next week. And we're staying in some lovely apartments by the lock. By the lock? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. By the quay. By the lock, by the quay, by the water. Just around the corner from the theatre, so that's really nice. But as far as kind of exciting things, I put a Viking helmet on and went round on a Splash Viking tour.
Went wound.
I went wound and wound on the Viking Splash tour, which is like a bus that goes in the water and converts into a boat. Very cool.
Anyways, we're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Mr. J-Wags, and we're joined by the one and only Duncan Sheik. We'll move on to the middle now.
All right.
Okay, yes.
Now, who would you put in your ultimate, most over-the-top rock supergroup?
Ooh, good question. Yes, follow.
So I have to put Glenn Tipton in there just for the when I was 10, 11 years old, like I was listening to almost all like Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden and Ozzy, whatever. It was just the normal sort of like heavy metal bullshit that you would listen to in South Carolina in the early 80s, Van Halen, obviously. So Tipton would be in there. The other person who I know and love is Mick Jones, the guitar player from Foreigner. I know him because I'm like really good friends with his daughter. He's got a couple daughters, and obviously Mark Ronson is his like stepson. So we worked together a couple times, and Mick is just like, he's like an incredible guitar player. I mean, some people may say Foreigner, it's like sort of AOR, 80s American rock. Mick is like an incredibly great guitar player.
Foreigner is one of the most underrated bands of the 80s and 70s. Like the sheer number of hits that like are in radio play still.
Oh yeah.
But we never connect them with Foreigner. It's always I Want to Know What Love Is. It's never like it's not Jukebox Hero. It's never like Dirty White Boy. It's like those great songs that were before that.
I'm doing like a 70s first record, and I just did Feels Like the First Time, but I did sort of like the Sufjan Stevens version of it. But like it's like incredible songwriting. It's like so smart and so cool and stands the test of time. So he'd be a member. The other person, just to be Australian for a bit, I would say Malcolm Young, not Angus, because he was the sort of unsung leader of the band. I mean, still is, presumably, but he's like the guy who like ties the room together. He's not a showman, but it's like if you listen to Back in Black as a record, it's an incredible document because it's like literally like drums, bass, guitar, vocals. It's 5 tracks. That's it.
Well, the thing I love about AC/DC, like I absolutely agree with you, like Malcolm Young is the secret sauce, but he's the one who wrote all the riffs. And I find it's one of these things where it's like, it's often the younger brother can't keep time, so they make him the lead guitarist. And the older brother's like, well, I have to be the drummer now. Like in Van Halen or in AC/DC, well, I got to be the rhythm guitarist.
Yeah.
But it's also just the synchronicity of a family band. I don't think you can get any other way. It's like the Bee Gees vocal harmonies.
Yeah.
The Youngs played guitar as though they were one giant guitar with 4 hands.
Yes.
And that's why that sound sounds so huge.
Yeah. It's funny because Mutt Lange produced that record, obviously Back in Black, and he's produced a lot of other amazing records, but he got like so weirdly like overly technical after that. Like when he made like the Def Leppard records, he would like record each drum like on its own track, and it would be like 100 tracks of guitars and layered drums. And look, I mean the Def Leppard records sound good too, I guess, but they're so, to me it does sound very manufactured. manufactured. Whereas Back in Black is like this document that's just like, it's like Steve Albini, who sadly rest in peace. That's when Mutt Lange was just like, okay, we're going to put microphones on an amplifier, put microphones on a drum set, vocalist is going to sing into a microphone, and we're going to press record. I love that.
Well, but the problem is that the live sound, to get the feel and the energy of live, it's so hard just to capture by just throwing up a mic. It's like so much of modern production is like the idea of trying to capture. Like, because I remember like a lot of early 80s stuff is trying to recapture the live sound. And it's just like they hadn't yet figured out like the amazing compression and the stuff that we've,
Here's the root of the problem with the 80s. I'm going to tell you the secret right now. And also, this person is like my mentor in life. So I do not mean this as any disrespect whatsoever. But when Peter Gabriel discovered the idea of gated reverb on a snare drum, it forever fucked how everyone recorded snare drums subsequently for the next 30, 40 years. And only now do we finally have like a generation of cool kids who are like, oh, put a towel on the snare drum and fucking make it sound like a goddamn snare drum. Like, it doesn't need to go... Like, that's not a drum. That's like a waterfall.
Well, it's like, what was the Motown thing? Didn't they use like deliberately use the oldest heads they could and put a wallet on the snare just to make sure it was like they weren't detracting from everything?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. So like Doug Yole is the drummer that I work with most days these days. And he's a brilliant guy. He's like a protege of Steve Gadd, right? And Steve Gadd is like, one of the most important drummers of the 70s. Like, he played on a bunch of the Steely Dan stuff and James Taylor and Paul Simon, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. That's Steve Gadd. He's like the OG king of like 70s session musician drummers,
I got to represent Jeff Porcaro if we got time, but
I'm a huge fan of Jeff. I love Toto. I'm a total yacht rock fan too. So just don't get me started on that. Steve's thing, if you listen to those tracks, it's like, it is dry he's also not hitting the drums that hard, but the feel and the pocket and everything is so awesome. The energy like feels amazing. When you hit a drum, there's like, yeah, you can be like a big hitter, I guess. But to me, there's like diminishing returns at a certain point. It's like, if you find the sweet spot, it's like the first time I heard Matt Johnson play drums when he was touring with Jeff Buckley, and he was doing it in store at Tower Records.
Oh, Tower.
And it was like, those are horrible gigs to play because it's like you have a weird sound system and there's no sound check. And Matt was just like hitting the drums like so quietly, but it was making such a fucking great sound in the room. It's just that thing of like listening to the instrument and finding the sweet spot of really where it sounds the best.
I've heard it explained, especially with drums, as when you hit the drums, you have to let the drum hit back.
Yeah.
Because there's an action and then you have to let the reaction hit. Otherwise, you're not letting the instrument do what it needs to do.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, I'm not a great drummer. Like, I play drums from time to time, but it's more just for therapy than, for action recording. But you do realize that, like, if you go and hit drums like an animal, from the Muppet movie, it's just sort of like noise. But if you find that weird little place, like in the middle, where it's like you're hitting it hard enough to make it respond, but you're letting it do its thing, then there's something really beautiful about that place. But it's like walking a tightrope a little bit.
Yeah. So I was doing this show, so I'm going to move us on now. So sorry.
It's okay. We haven't even gotten to the first review and we're an hour in. It's okay.
This is the part of the show that sucks, because I'm sitting here listening to this fascinating stuff, but I know, like, I can hear the clock ticking in my head, and I know, like, I have to move aside, and I am so sorry, and I don't want to, but I do have to. So this week, I chose the metal album, and I went with some good old-fashioned Aussie pub punk, and I've reviewed it this week because Jonathan didn't want to.
I've done metal the last 4 times. I haven't done the musical in a while.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that's why you chose it. I'm going to speed through this really quickly, and if I feel like it's too long, I'm going to just throw them all away and skip to the last page. Anyways, I'm going to quickly get into this, because I chose the Cosmic Psychos' self-titular album, Cosmic Psychos.
Eponymous, I think, is the word that you're looking for.
Oh, no, I like titular because I get to say tit.
Okay, well.
Nice.
Always childish, no matter how smart I can be sometimes. Anyways, when I first decided to explore the Cosmic Psychos, it was purely to match up with today's chosen musical. Like, I'm familiar with them, but didn't know they were punk until now. So I provoked the psychos on Spotify and was immediately taken back to my punk days. Trauma. The opening number, Decadence, is exactly what I want in punk. Short, angry songs about the disillusion, and whilst I have no idea about the lyrics, I presume they're fittingly decadent. Going down the playlist, a rock and roll vibe comes through, common for punk bands, and here is not overly powerful. Lead Me Astray with No Complications could be the title of my memoir about my punk days. But then I see a toaster and I think of breakfast. Yum. Rain on You has a hooky chorus that stands out against the cloudy verses, and this would be a pub favourite, no doubt. Quarter to 3 is wrongly placed as track 6. Turns out punks can't count either, because it should be track 3, 2 maybe, and at 5 minutes long, with a slightly more hard rock flavour, it isn't as fun as those prior. Jellyfish took us back into familiar waters whilst adding some sleaze, but it too is almost 5 minutes long and slightly spineless by being softer. Rambo enters and after a rocky start ends up slaughtering the house down boots with a rock and roll punk beat and a much more appropriate length for that genre, and a fuck off band like Cosmic Psychos' reputation says they are. And track 9, Can't Come In, says fuck off in spades and reminds me of the tattoo on my lower back because you can't come in. Tell me that you love me after telling me to fuck off. It's very Aussie pub punk. So I guess this time you can oh, what am I saying? Anyway, 74 seconds ticks over and I'm thrilled. A short song, only it's not. They lied and can't count. This song should be called 133 Seconds, for crying out loud.
Yes.
David Reloff finishes us off like Rambo, and whilst I know he's a person, it finishes off with a great big 20-inch cock. And after the doctor said I'm lacking in vitamin D, I'm not sure that's what he meant. Thankfully, 4 stars and ouch.
Yeah, I was going to make a vitamin D joke, but I didn't.
So I already had that planned.
Aaron had it locked and loaded.
That's why I had to make sure to get that in. That was true about the doctor, right? But my phone, as I say, my phone is usually switched off. It was on, but it was on silent. I saw it light up and sort of heard it vibrating over the music, like, because I was sitting here listening to this band, to this CD at the time. So this was only just earlier today. And I managed to get that call from my doctor by pure sheer dumb luck. But anyways, the front half of this 35-minute album is definitely stronger than the first, but I quite really enjoyed it. I thought this was fun. And what I love from punk are a couple of songs that were a bit too long and too hard rock for me, but it's very Australian, and I loved that.
Now, the songs may be derivative, the musicianship may be C+, the lyrics may be unintelligible, but let's not forget that this production is also very bad. There's nothing on this album I found above average. From the photo of the album with 3 men in flannels looking very average. Oh, they're flipping me off. These guys look like they're hardcore. Oh my, I'm afraid. Oh wait, the fact that every solo sounded vaguely the same and was buried so deep in the mix, I had to EQ to hear the guitar solos. The fact that I could not understand a damn thing anyone said in any song made it a little boring for me. It made me want to listen to the groups that clearly influenced these people. AC/DC, Sabbath, the Ramones, Dead Kennedys, Social Distortion, all far better bands.
No, I didn't hear any of them.
Far better bands. This band, had I heard in a bar, I would be gone. I would have left a drink to get out of a bar where this music was playing.
Really?
So never would I want to listen to this music again, but it made me want to listen to music it reminded me of.
Man, I'm sorry, I disagree. We would have sculled a whole jug of beer, and then we would have been at the front of that gig, and we would have been just going rah, 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 and smashing into each other in our leather jackets and our tartan pants, which I am wearing today. So I completely just
Y'all have fun. I would be.
Aaron? Are you doing double plaid?
It's not plaid, it's tartan for one thing. But it's also like 5 degrees, so I have a jacket on, but I'll take it off just so I don't get picked on by Duncan Sheik, because Sheik is literally in your name. Sorry.
Far be it for me to judge anybody about their sartorial proclivities, but like, I notice these things.
That's fine. It's only purely because it's cold, and the other jacket I've got's like really thick. So
is it cold in Melbourne right now?
Winter.
Very cold. It's the middle of winter. Yeah. It's like I'll be able to tell you.
I'm jealous. I'm honestly jealous.
At the moment outside, it's 3 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
That is 38 Fahrenheit.
Yeah, that's cool. That's chilly.
At the moment, I'm sitting with a fan just off camera.
That's chilly. I'm mostly Scottish and Irish and part Lithuanian. So I actually like colder weather, you know. I mean, I can survive in hot weather.
I'm skinny as anything, Duncan. That cold goes right to my bones, and I'm just like, ugh. But
Yeah.
the heat melts me, so I do prefer cooler weather. But yeah, no. So okay, on the music, Cosmic Psychos, Duncan. What did you think of this?
I didn't know this band before you sent it to me. I have a soft spot for this kind of music, but it's like retroactively because, you know, one of my new favorite bands, or not, they're not that new, but I don't know if we talked about them the last time we spoke, but is the Beths. And they're actually they're Kiwis, they're from New Zealand. They're like a pub band, but a pub band of the highest order. Like the songwriting is so smart and so cool. And I saw them, they played in Brooklyn, I guess it was like a year ago. You know, the show was great, sounded amazing, but you could tell like, you know, there's like 2,000 people in the audience and it was like a religious experience for them, you know, and I really appreciated that. Like there was that thing that they just have a connection with this band who's doing a very, you know, relatively sort of simple, you could say unsophisticated thing. The audience is so connected to them.
Yep.
And I really appreciated that. You know, but like when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, you know, I would listen to things like Midnight Oil. And so, you know, so I know this sort of tradition in a way of like, it's sort of like what we call bar bands. But I guess in Australia you call them pub bands, right?
Yeah.
But there is a sort of tradition of that if you do it really well, then it's cool. And I like it. And so also that record, the one that you sent me, what year was it made? 89? Was it
87?
87? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a tough moment to be making alternative music because again, it's partly to do with the Peter Gabriel problem that I mentioned before, but I just think people had lost their way in the recording studio during that period of time. It was like technology was driving how things sounded more than the players and the instruments. That's with a few exceptions. You know, I suppose the Smiths went out with a bang in 87. You know, Depeche Mode made Black Celebration in 86. It's a good sounding record. But a lot of stuff that happened in the late 80s and early 90s, to me personally, sounds like dog shit. There was something going on in the recording world at that moment when even bands that I really like, bands like Duran Duran, they went from being like interesting to like the Power Station. Like, I mean, those are hideous sounding records. You know, I'm sorry. They're just, you know what I mean? It's like, something happened in that moment that was just not good. That's why Nirvana is so esteemed, is that they were like the corrective to that bad, whatever was happening sonically during the late 80s and early 90s.
Do you think the moment of the late 80s was in fact, because the beginning of the 80s is where we first started to get digital technology, but the end of the 80s is where we first started recording to digital tape.
Yeah.
So most of the 80s was the tension with the analog and the digital, and then we figured, oh, we can just record it all digital, and then we got into a bunch of things like the Jeff Goldblum, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And I think it led to a lot of hot crap. And then the Butch Vig Nirvana thing, the advances made it cleaner as opposed to cluttering, is what it did for me.
Yeah. So I mean, look, Butch is an amazing producer, and I would never take anything away from him. It's more like what was happening in what I would just call top 40 radio music in the late 80s and early 90s. To me, was just the technology had gotten so good and so sort of available that you had these sort of moronic producers like going in and putting in like 170 fucking drum tracks that were just like, you know, oh, I'll put in like this cowbell and this 909 and this 808 and this thing. And it was just a bunch of fucking cluttered nonsense. I mean, I like drum machines as much as the next guy, but like, don't gild the lily. So this is what I was saying. There was a moment when they were gilding the lily technologically. Yeah. And it was also this weird moment where hip hop had started to happen and like house music had sort of started to happen and techno had started to happen. But there's that weird thing where like an important genre of music, when it first becomes hip, a bunch of people who are assholes and morons, they like take it and they fuck with it in a really bad way. You know, like if you remember disco in the late 70s, like there was all these horrible disco disco records, right? I mean, the Bee Gees made amazing sounding records, okay? But there's all these people who bastardize the genre. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
You know, in every era, there's this issue where like the Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message, right? It's very important text. And I think that he said something very profound, which is that like, yeah, the medium very much determines what the artwork is going to be. And I think that, you know, the late 80s and the early 90s was a time when we had all this access to all this digital technology, you know, and all this cool stuff that we could do. I mean, you know, I was a teenager, I was loving it, but like, we didn't know how to deal with it yet. And so we made a lot of mistakes. That's what I would say. And there are people, you know, like people like Rick Rubin, who either by accident or by design said, yeah, no, fuck that. I'm not going to I'm going to make a Red Hot Chili Peppers record and I'm not going to use any reverb whatsoever. I'm just going to use compression and I'm not going to tune the vocals. Anthony Kiedis can't really sing, but so what? And I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to make the record that way, you know, and he made a choice. It was a strong choice. It's a great sounding record. Blood, Sex, Sugar. I think, you know, it's like you needed people to sort of come in and say like, stop the nonsense.
I could literally talk gear and like Jeff Porcaro and Butch Vig all day. This is something I could.
Yeah, we didn't even get into Toto and yacht rock generally yet.
I know.
No, but what did you think of this album after all that?
Well, again, I'm charmed by it because it's like a precursor to these things that I currently really like.
There's a rawness, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, like, I was a huge AC/DC fan, you know, and other things, whether it was Midnight Oil or even, you know, In Excess. Like, okay, In Excess, I think, is another good example of great band and obviously a really visionary artist who suffered, like, those recordings, a lot of them don't stand the test of time as well as they might because of the way they were recorded. But that's, you know, one man's opinion. So I have a real fondness for, you know, sort of Australian sort of pub band culture. And, you know, there's a few people, you know, like, for example, Colin
Hay.
Huh?
Colin Hay from Men at Work.
Colin Hay. Yeah. So Colin Hay. Look, I mean, obviously he was Scottish initially, but
He's now ours. He come from a land down under.
yeah. So sort of like they were like a pub band, but they wrote really fucking good songs and they sold 40 million records over the course of 2 records. Like nobody does that today. Like Taylor Swift does not do that.
Well, no one sells records anymore. They're all streams. It's
No, I
like,
know.
it's a completely different metric.
That's semantics.
No, I'm just saying, like, you know, that, like, you know, there is a thing about like pub bands where they're doing something that is, I wouldn't say it's, you know, it's not like super complex, but they find a way of making 2 guitars, a bass, and drums, and another instrument sound really interesting in a way that normally you wouldn't think you could pull that off. There's some special sauce in there that can really be fantastic. Like, I really appreciate when I see a band and it's just 3 or 4 or 5 people and there's not a lot of like jiggery pokery and they just like make the shit sound great on stage. And then they make a record that also sounds equally as good. You know, that to me is very impressive because I'm the world's worst offender of like, you know, recording 170 tracks of nonsense and then spending, you know, 2 months stripping it all away and then redoing it again. You know, I really appreciate this idea of just like, oh, you know, put a microphone on the instrument, press record, and then be done with it.
Cosmic Psychos were never interested in that big production. They were never interested in big concerts or making lots of money. They literally wanted free beer. And that's the reason why most Australian bands start.
To me, it's a very noble goal. Listen, I've been on a few private planes in my life. None of them that I've personally owned, thank God. But it's fine. It's nice. But who gives a fuck? Like, seriously, like, having a nice beer with your friend is way better than being on an annoying 3-hour-long private jet flight. You know, I'm just saying, it's just like, that's a noble to me.
That's Australia for you.
Yeah. Well, you have to have, I'd love to have a beer with Duncan in there because, obviously, because that's important.
That's it. Yes, I I would use that as a segue, but I won't, because we will have to pay for advertising, because that actually is being used in Australia for Duncan's liquor stores.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Oh.
They're not paying us, more so. They're not paying us. It's not a matter of me paying them. They're not paying us to advertise. Anyways, we are going to move on, because, oh shit, it's 2:45, so we better rush to an ad break. That was a pre-written one. I had no idea we were going to go way over time. G'day listeners, Aaron here, and I'm joined by Spencer as usual. How's it going, Spencer?
Going great, Aaron, in the greatest city in the world.
Are you in Melbourne?
Funny joke.
All right, so we're doing this week's Bloop news update of what's happening around the Bloop network. So Spencer, what has been happening?
BroadwayCon, it was a great weekend. We had our first ever live episode for Bloop Network and for the EGOT Goes To. You can listen to that now. It's out.
It is out publicly, not just on our Patreon.
Yeah, it was a really fun weekend. There were a lot of great panels.
Speaking of panels, now your podcast and the EGOT Goes To is looking for some new people, I believe.
Yes, we're moving into Emmys season now, and then after that we'll have Grammys and Oscars. And we're looking for people to be a part of our panels for those. You know, the original intention behind this show was not to just be a Tony's show, but to have people who have expertise in the different things. Myself, I do not have expertise in particularly the Emmys and the Oscars, but I even think with like popular music, with the Grammys, I'm not the right person to moderate these conversations when we get to the other things. And so we're looking for hosts and panels, people who are in the industry, people who are knowledgeable about the industry. Yeah, we're excited to start the look. So you can reach out on Instagram or Twitter at EGOT_podcast. And you can also reach out to our email and the EGOT Goes To podcast at gmail.com or networkbloop@gmail.com.
For the listeners at home, obviously it's been a rough year last year in terms of having strikes and awards ceremonies getting pushed back. So unfortunately, you weren't able to fulfill the 4 award categories for the first season, which was it was a shame. So you worked really hard at it.
And also, you can continue to listen to us if you listen to us just for the Tonys. That will always be my part, my thing. And so we will always be there with our Tonys news as well.
Well, that's you, Matt. Has Matt got any news?
I don't know. You didn't tell me if Matt had any news.
Well, I asked him and he hasn't got back to me. He's working. That's fine. He's at work today. He's got his day job.
Matt is working.
Yes. Mr. J-Wags has his Second City, New York City performances, and he would have just had a performance with Scott Adsit from 30 Rock. So if you're in New York City or Brooklyn or around that area, get along to Second City NYC and check out Mr. J-Wags' show. Every couple of weeks, they're going to have a big celebrity guest come in and tell a story, and then the improv troupe has to improvise a performance based around that story.
I would love to see it. And if you've been listening to Around the World in 80 Plays, they're about to wrap up their tour of the UK. And in addition to that, Lizzie's about to wrap up her time in the West End as well.
Goodness gracious me, it feels like just yesterday they started on that tour. They've been working on that show since April last year.
That's crazy. It's been a ton of fun getting to work with the two of them. They're the kindest people.
Obviously, with me, you can buy the Toniston Tales, read the Toniston Tales, and tell me it was okay. It was all right. That's what most people say. What else have we got? We got any other news? We're hoping to. Oh, if you've got a new show, and as always, we're looking for brand new shows to add to the Bloop network. So if you have an idea for a unique concept or something that's been bubbling away in your head, email us at networkbloop@gmail.com. Pitch us your show, and who knows, you might be sitting here doing one of these silly Bloop network news ads. My improvising is terrible today. And also, Spencer, you had your show recently, 54 Does Wolfpack.
Yeah, it went really well. It was a ton of fun. The cast was amazing. The band was amazing. And I think the audience had really a ton of fun. It was a new thing for 54 Below to have this kind of like niche funk group that has very musical theater-esque music. But it was really, really great. And you can see that I'm posting a little bit on my pages. I'm starting to now that things are slowing down. And yeah, it went really well. You can watch my social media, my Instagram at Share Spencer, or my Twitter Spencer Share _ for some upcoming show announcements.
Ooh, things bubbling in the works.
Always.
Is it Aaron's 40th bar mitzvah?
You know, it was pitched, but we had to say no.
Well, anyways, that's it from us, I guess. There's nothing else really. We've got some things bubbling in the works, so hopefully we can make those announcements soon. And that's it. Back to the episode.
Go see live theater.
We're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron. That's Mr. J-Wags.
Hello.
And we're joined by Idol Teen turned Teen Idol. I used that in your introduction. Oh, shit. I'll write another one. Mr. Duncan Sheik. Now, at the risk of putting this idea out into the universe, if you could see a musical based on a video game, what would that be? And what video game based on a musical would you like to play?
Well, okay, I'm a weird person because although I grew up in the 80s in sort of video game culture, I was not like a video game person.
You weren't a dork like the rest of us.
I don't know what it was. Something happened that sort of turned me off. But I did like Galaga.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Good man. Good man. Oh, yeah. Love Galaga.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to go with that just for the sake of authenticity.
Yep. But what musical would you like to play as a video game?
Well, so I do have this. Sorry, every story that I tell is going to have a slight narrative. Do you mind?
That's fine. We love it.
Okay, so I was in London in 2017 or 2018, and they were doing a version of Whisper House at the Other Palace, which is a nice sort of off West End theater that's near Buckingham Palace, which is why it's called the Other Palace. And it was actually Andrew Lloyd Webber's spot. I don't know if he owned the property or whatever, but he was part of the institution. And I was like, in rehearsals for Whisper House there. And I went to go take a piss, and then like there's Andrew there in the stall next door. I mean, he knew who I was sort of vaguely, obviously I know who he is. It's just that awkward thing where you're like taking a piss next to somebody, it's like, what do you talk about,
You don't. That's the thing. You're not meant to actually talk to somebody when you're weeing.
Well, I mean, but it's like, it's Andrew Lloyd Webber. Like, I'm not going to just ignore the guy. That'd be rude, like in a way.
I just want you to have leaned over midstream and be like, Skimbleshanks the Railway Cat was the shit, man. You're awesome. Just like lean over. 13-8 time. That's what we need. More of in the world. Fuck yeah, Skimbleshanks.
I was like, I should have said, Andrew, how's it hanging? But I didn't. I just was like, to the left or to the right? I don't know. Anyway.
Probably pretty low.
Yes. They have descended like the chandelier at this point.
Anyway, so, it's that funny thing where it's like, oh, hey, how's it going? He's like, obviously you're doing this show here at my theater, but, what do you have going on in New York? And I was like, well, there's a few things I got in the works, but I was like, Andrew, you've got too many shows like on Broadway right now. Like, cut us a break over here,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had 4 shows on Broadway at that point. 4. It was crazy.
I think at that moment, he did weirdly have like 3 or 4 shows simultaneously on Broadway at the same time, right?
It was Phantom, School of Rock, Sunset Boulevard, and Cats, all at the same time.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly right. So I was sort of like low-key throwing him shade about that because I was like, I'm a New Yorker. Like, you're just like a fucking asshole who's stealing all our property,
Yeah, he's only got a Lord title to his name and a Baron title.
Sir Lord. He's a Sir Lord. He's both.
Anyway, so this is a very long-winded answer to the question. I have this idea of doing a one-person. Isn't there like is video game that's like one player or something? Is there some?
I mean, there are a lot of single-player games. There's like a lot of first-person shooter games.
Oh no, I know, but there's something that's like it's like a specific, maybe it's a movie or something. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I have this idea of doing a one-person iteration of Cats, and it's called Cat.
That was probably the greatest tangent anybody has ever gone on, because it was literally you're telling us about piddling next to Andrew Lloyd Webber.
I've never had the honor of urinating next to Lord Lloyd Webber. Sir Andrew always peed separately.
I don't know if it's an honor. I mean, he's a lovely man.
I probably shouldn't put this out there in the universe. From doing the show, I've been invited to a few opening nights lately. Right now, see, I'm going to these opening nights knowing that there's a lot of people there that I've invited onto the show or would love to have onto the show. There is no way in hell I'm going to the toilet at all while I'm at an opening night, because there's no way I'm going to risk accidentally pissing on myself or turning to them and say, hey, I want to have you on my show, and pissing on them. I don't want to be in that moment of forgetting what I'm doing and realizing, oh shit, it's the person I've been trying to get on my show. And then suddenly I've got wee all down my front. No, I will hold it in for 3.5 hours if I have to.
I will say this, in my somewhat limited experience in the world of musical theater, there are more deals made in the men's bathroom than you might imagine.
Well, then I probably shouldn't be voting, but no, I'm not ready to embarrass myself like that. Or on the golf course. That's the other one. It's in the men's room on the golf course.
In the men's bathroom, the golf course, yeah, I mean, there's a couple odd places where things seem to happen that you wouldn't think would happen, but
no. But see, the difference is that you're Duncan Sheik talking to Andrew Lloyd Webber. I'm a nobody talking to people I'm trying to impress and get on my show, and doing that with my dick in my hand. Not a good look.
But Aaron, let me say this as somebody who really is not famous. Like, I get recognized like once every 2 months when I'm walking down the street. I'm not, and I actually like that. But like, the truth is, like, even the most famous people that I do know, like, they love it when people respectfully come up to them and appreciate what they're doing.
Yeah, but not with their dick in their hand. Not with their dick in their hand.
Even with a dick in your hand. I promise.
To be honest, Aaron, we've never seen your dick. It could be very impressive. It could be very friendly. It could be leading with your best foot forward.
That might depend on the person, but I'm just saying, like, you know,
the medium is the message. You were right.
Some of the best, yeah, well, that's true. No, but I'm just saying, like, some of the best interactions that I've ever had, like, with like super famous people, were very random. You know, it wasn't like I wasn't seeking them out. They certainly weren't seeking me out, but it was just like, oh, you're in a situation with somebody, and then if you have a respectful conversation with them, it's weird, you know, because now we're in this sort of parasocial universe where you know somebody because you spend a lot of time like watching them online, and then you feel like you sort of know them. I mean, they might know who you are, but they probably don't. So you have that weird thing where it's like you know somebody really well because you watch them all the time online,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you know, or on a TV show or whatever.
soap opera actors get it all the time.
Yeah, exactly right. So, you know, there's some handsome guy or some pretty girl, and there's, you know, some random person in the supermarket, and they're just like, oh, hi, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then they just like start talking to you like as if they know you. I don't think that's the right approach. But if you're respectfully just being like, oh, you know, I saw this thing and it was amazing, and I think you're awesome. Have a great day. You'd be surprised at how well that is received, even if you're fucking Tom Cruise. You know,
if I'm standing there with my dick in my hand and they have their dick in their hand and I say, hey, that thing is amazing, I don't know if that's going to go down well. I don't know. Just
Context is everything.
It depends on the actor, I suppose, or person, whoever that may be. I can't speak for all of them, but I will say that, like, there's a funny thing. It's like most of the time, I think people who are like really, really iconic sort of fame level, they're always super nice and super cool. It's really people who are like aspiring to be famous and iconic. They're the worst.
Yes, I completely agree. Oh my God, fathers, don't get me started.
I know. I have been that guy. I freely will admit that, like, there are moments in my life and my career where I've been that guy, where I was so, like, I don't know, like aspirational that, like, I was just being a dick all the time, like an asshole. And you have to sort of recognize that, like, people aren't interested in your ambitions. Like, they're interested in what you do. Like, they're interested in what your work is, you know?
That's one of the things that like I can always tell a professional songwriter from an aspiring songwriter, because professional songwriters are like, oh, I released this thing. Aspiring songwriters like, I'm working on this thing and this thing is going to feel. I'm like, well, then write it and then show it to us. And then you'll have done the thing.
Yes, don't get me fucking started, Jonathan. We will be here for another hour of me ranting.
Well, honestly, this conversation could go on for like...
All right, so there'll be part 2 and part 3. We're just going to make it a 6-hour chat.
Speaking of the work we created, I guess, improvised segue, this week we're doing American Psycho the Musical, and Mr. G-Wags has hacked into that album for his review. Now, just remember, we have a Grammy and Tony Award-winning composer who wrote this show.
And it's lovely to have you here, Duncan. Here's what I thought of the show. So I don't know if you're a fan of the AV Club. It used to be part of the Onion website, but it's a pop culture website. And one of my favorite things on that, it's a thing, and it just came back finally. It's called The World of Flops, or My World of Flops. And they discuss famous pop culture flops, and they have 3 rankings. Is it a failure? Is it a secret success? Or is it a fiasco? And I feel like that ranking system feels like the best way to sort of approach this, because I have not seen the show. This is one of the problems being on Broadway at the same time of another show. I literally had no chance to see the show.
Many people in America did not see it because it only lasted for 9 or 10 weeks, you know. So.
That's longer than the show we did last week with Glenn Slater. That was 20 performances.
Yeah, and the recording is the London version, and obviously there have been large changes made from the London version to the Broadway version.
Honestly, it's a Frankenstein. Sorry, just to interrupt, because we had done the show at the Almeida with Matt Smith and the London sort of team. And then I was prepping for the Broadway run. And so there was like some things that I did that were sort of like what happened on Broadway, but I had the London cast sing against the new iterations of the song. Musical theater, you know how it is. It's like they're never finished. They just close at some point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It goes back to the reason people are like, well, why don't you record your album to sell your show? I'm like, because we don't have the show. We need to produce the show to make sure we have the show. And then we record it. But yes, we're getting off topic. So in this case, I was fascinated by a show that raised more questions than it answered, which is very rare for a musical for me. And it ended up coming down to one of my favorite musical fiascos is the adaptation of High Fidelity. Mm-hmm. And I think High Fidelity is a show with a lot of great ideas and a lot of great things in it. But I think that the concept of the show is fundamentally flawed and works against it. The idea of High Fidelity is all these people work in the store and they only experience music as critics. They do not create it. But if it's a musical, they're creating music the whole damn show. And then at the end, the reveal that this character can sing is a complete wet fart because we've listened to him sing the whole show.
That's actually a very concise and accurate analysis of why an otherwise really interesting book and interesting movie cannot work as a musical. But yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
And I think similarly, that's what happened with American Psycho. I feel like we have a fundamentally flawed concept because psychopaths at core are beings who cannot emotionally experience change. And so it turns what is actually a very horrible thing, like objectively horrible things are happening in this show as being described and going through there. But we have as our lead character someone whose discovery is that they have no emotional core. And that, as someone who has been trained as a songwriter and someone as a music theater actor as well, is that the music starts where the emotion can no longer be said. And so much of the emotion in the show was behind a gloss of 80s for me. And for me, the show never broke into true catharsis, with the exception of Gene. The show never breaks into catharsis because no one is ever willing to let themselves down to the point where we are getting to a point of true song worthiness. And then I feel that the fact that the show was done completely in an 80s genre in some ways was an incredible choice because it took the 80s back. So much of Broadway 80s is like neon, dayglow, what a fun time. It's like, actually, the 80s were kind of fucked up and a lot of people had very fucked up lives. Seedy 80s, I'm glad is being represented, but I think it locked us into a sort of distance with the score, and the distance provided by 80s new wave songs don't have a lot of emotional range. They don't have a lot of vocal range. No one's going for the high note. A lot of the rhyme schemes are very similar. You had one song, I think, in 3-time, and I noted, like, it's in 3-time, but it's synthy. I love this. It got me into a rhythm of the the show that the only time I got pulled out of was when the covers came in, but I felt that the covers confused me more than anything because in some cases, the covers were diegetic to the club. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. They're in the club. But in some case, it was characters singing as themselves. I'm like, but these characters are set in the 80s. So in the play, are they singing cover songs to each other with the knowledge that... So again, it raised more questions than it answers. And in some ways, I thought it was good. And in some ways, it just led me to like, why was this choice made? Go full jukebox or go full original, because the juxtaposition gave me the Moulin Rouge thing where like at the beginning of every Moulin Rouge song, I'm listening, oh, what song is this really? And in this show, I'm halfway through the song, I'm like, is this an 80s song I just don't know? Or is this one original? I don't know how I'm supposed to be enjoying the song yet. So there came an element of, I guess I needed more of a roadmap because I wasn't watching it. Never have I more wanted to watch what was happening in a show while I was listening to a cast recording, because I know it must have looked so fucking cool. But listening to it, I felt there was always this sense of distance which kept me away from the meat of the character. And reading through the synopsis, it felt like a lot of the drama happened in the book and not in the score. So having not seen it and only experiencing this through the score, I'd have to say it feels a bit more like a fiasco than it would a secret success or a failure. I don't think the show hangs together just from what I have heard of the show as the piece it is doing. And I think it's because the concept of the show is fundamentally flawed and Patrick Bateman is not a character who needs to sing.
I disagree on that one.
That's where I come down on. I think there's some amazing work in it. Just overall, I do not think it holds together. But I would say it's a fascinating fiasco. And if the idea is that you'd want someone to see the show after listening to it, I absolutely want to see this show now. And not for a second was I ever bored with this show.
Okay, first of all, I'm not kissing ass. I 100% agree with you.
Oh no, you can tell him to fuck off all you like. You can tell him to fuck off.
No, I really do. And I fought back against many of the things that you find problematic in just even in the record itself. And it was one of the central problems, because here is the problem with American Psycho, is that if you read the original book, Patrick Bateman is, as you say, this, I mean, you could say narcissist, but it's really not really narcissism. It's more like nihilism, you know, because he's actually very like, he has a lot of self-confidence issues, you know?
He's a little boy. He's a little boy inside. Really?
That's why he drags Gene along.
Yeah, he's just like, think about the version in the book, or you think about Christian Bale, you know, he's handsome and he's fit and he's sexy and he's, you know, ostensibly fairly rich and he has a cool apartment and blah, 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 you know, all those things. And I think that like it's the vapidity of that character that was interesting, because it becomes a cipher. It becomes like Patrick Bateman is sort of like tabula rasa in a weird way, because he's just like, no, he doesn't like, there are no real aspects to him.
Can I just jump in there? Tabula rasa means blank slate for people at home.
Yeah. He's a stand-in for late capitalism as an idea, right?
Yes.
So to me and to Rupert, that was always what was interesting about it. It's sort of why it worked much better in London at the Almeida, because first of all, like people in London, they love making fun of Americans because we're American and we're stupid. I mean, it's true. And that's actually why it did pretty well in Australia as well, because it's like, you know, Australians also like to make fun of Americans, and rightfully so, you know.
Yeah, that's why I have a podcast.
But Americans don't have a very good sense of humor about themselves. You know, it's like Rupert had just done Enron also on Broadway, which was an incredible production, but it didn't really work because it was like all the people who were going to the Broadway house were like people who were sort of tangentially in some investment bank or something, and they don't like being made fun of, like when they go see a show with their wife. And really, like, the problem is, like, in London, there's a sort of self-deprecating sense of humor that exists. Americans don't really have, like, Americans like to make fun of other people. They don't like to be made fun of.
Well, a question off of that. American Psycho feels as though it is going for a very specific, stylized sort of 80s noir cool. And it's trying to be very specifically cool. It's also trying at the same time to be a very disturbing, dark comedy.
Yeah.
Coming from a comedy background, I work at Second City, and like comedy's my day job.
Plug.
How do you thread the needle going for something to be ostensibly cool and also something that is ostensibly meant to be a comedy? Because I find going for cool too much, it's antithetical to good comedy.
Yeah. So I agree. So, I mean, I have to look at things like the Coen brothers, I'll just bring up them as an oeuvre, okay? Where you essentially have the most noir, sort of dark storytelling you can imagine often, and yet it's hilariously funny, because of it's like gallows humor, in a weird way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So look, when I first read American Psycho, when I was a 20-something-year-old at university, I loved Less Than Zero because it was sort of this fun LA rom. And then I read American Psycho and I was like, God, this is so fucking dark. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, because there are those passages in there that are just so
graphic.
I mean,
Yeah.
Like,
they're just
they're just the rat sequence, which I'm assuming you didn't put in the music.
yeah, like it's just it's an interesting thing about writing. Even those sequences, when you put them on film or when you put them on stage, they're not that effective. But like in a book, it's like really disturbing.
Yeah, I was thinking of this before because you're creating the image in your own mind and you're also filling in all those blanks that aren't written down.
Yes.
So it stays with you more. Reading does not damage people. You should read more books, people.
Yeah. So exactly. Well, 100%, but I don't want to digress on that subject. But yes, everybody read more books. Read books.
It's one of the reasons Stephen King adaptations don't really work is because he's such a writer inside the mind. It doesn't work when it's just like, and now watch a person do this. Like, yep, you need the internal monologue.
Well, that's right. I mean, so you're right about that in the sense that like the book is written very much, it's the subjectivity of Patrick Bateman, who is not only a nihilist and a sort of a blank, like a cipher for late capitalism, but he's also an unreliable narrator. And so you realize at a certain point in the book, like, oh shit, maybe none of this is actually happening at all.
Yeah.
Isn't that,
right?
Wasn't that, spoiler alert, wasn't that the whole twist?
Brett kept it ambiguous for a reason. And I did ask him about this. I was like, is this just shit that was happening in his mind? Or is this shit that actually happened, quote unquote, in real life? And Brett was like, well, I'm not going to answer that question.
Oh no, boo.
No, but I hate to use a term like IP, but obviously,
Use it. It's the term.
there are things that have an IP, and there's certain weird things in the culture where some of them are sort of very lowbrow, but they managed to sort of like maintain intrigue over a period of time. American Psycho was not in fact, it was, the publisher rejected it. He had to get another publisher to publish the book. It was not a success initially, but it had a cult following. And then Mary made the movie with Christian Bale. It was like a $2 million sort of shitty indie film, but it's not shitty. It's a good film. It's just, like John Cale did the soundtrack. It's like, it's a great film, but it was like an inexpensive, weird little cult movie from the early 90s. And then it just had a long tail. And so even like when we did it at the Almeida, it was always sold out every night. We did it on Broadway. Producers were like, we have a theater, we can go in the early summer, but it was like, post the Tonys, and it was the same season as Hamilton.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the worst idea ever.
Oh, that season.
We are going to get murdered. And we're Patrick Bateman. Right? I mean, I was vehemently opposed to it, right? But, I'm just the composer. It wasn't my call. Listen, I'm still, to this day, I'm very good friends with all of the producers of the show and everyone involved. And Rupert and Roberto are, two of my favorite people in the world. I love everybody involved in this show. But it was just, the timing was so shitty. And also, by the way, we opened and closed 2 months before Donald Trump became president of the United States. So just think about that for a second.
Yep.
Okay. Had we waited
one season,
it would have been a completely different situation. And I think this is where you get into this weird territory of like, why does a musical work? It's not like necessarily just about the book or just about the lyrics or just about the music or just about the actor or just about the director. It's a weird alchemy of, I don't think you can't manufacture it. I think you can avoid not doing it at the wrong time, but you never know when is the right time. My big advice to any young aspiring musical theater composers or anybody who's involved, always try to avoid doing things when they're not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, those of all of us who can see the future and read minds. Some of us haven't seen Back to the Future and don't know what happens when you mess with time.
No, but I'm saying, but I think you have a gut instinct though, like where you sort of know, like, oh wait, this actually it has relevance now because of whatever's going on in the wider picture. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I say this all the time. You said the word alchemy before, and if you listen back to it, so a lot of our episodes, when we're doing shows that were a flop, I say, is there an actual flop, or is there just the alchemy of a situation? Because look at Merrily We Roll Along. Just came out too soon. It got fixed up along the way, and now it's a massive hit. And there are many shows along the way.
Well, Merrily also got Harry Potter. Like, we can't... Harry Potter showed up. Jonathan Groff showed up. Like, of course, Harry Potter's going to sell out any theater on Broadway. You could put him in there in a one-man show in a chair. He would have sold it out.
Merrily had a following before that revival on Broadway.
You know, there was a lot of elements. I mean, Sondheim.
Sondheim's had a lot of flops.
He had a lot of flops. Into the Woods was a flop on Broadway. People don't know this. It is the most performed show in MTI's catalog, okay? It was a flop. It didn't work. You know, Sondheim was considered like this sort of weird, out-of-the-box weirdo guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, now he, you know, even, you know, whatever. I mean, Sweeney Todd was the first Broadway show I ever went to see. And my mom brought me there by accident. Like, she didn't know what to do with me. And I was like 10, you know, and I saw it, you know, and it was like, you know, I'm sitting there with her, like, in the 5th row. And, you know, there's like blood coming down the stage with the Angela Lansbury, whatever, you know. And I'm like, Mom, what the hell is this? What did you bring me to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.
That sounds like a great first Broadway experience.
No, it was great. I mean, I was totally into it, but I was just like, Mom, this is very weird. Like, why?
Yeah. Before we get off American Psycho, I just wanted to get back to this point. So in Spring Awakening, as I recall, the adults do not sing because it's the kids' voices that are the important one. Yet.
No, they only sing in Totally Fucked, but it's sort of not diegetic, as to use that word. Yeah.
But so then, for something like American Psycho, where we have a character who's a literal psychopath, had you ever considered doing something where Patrick Bateman didn't sing and everyone else sang around him? Or what about Patrick Bateman? It's just coming back to the ideas from a songwriter. I don't know how I'd write a song for a guy who has no center, who doesn't exist.
Yeah, so I mean, that's really, I mean, if you listen to the last song on the record, I mean, I literally, that is in the lyric.
Yeah.
In This Is Not an Exit, I literally say, like, it's like his reveal at that point where he's like, that's the reveal. Is at the end of the show where he says, like, I don't exist. I'm a figment of everybody's imagination of this late 80s sort of hysteria of money and wealth and fame and looks and materialism, this sort of like weird miasma of like a fever dream that America was in at that moment and is still currently in, might I remind you.
Yeah.
That to me was like the thing. It's like, yeah, I don't exist. Now, is that a cool idea? Absolutely. Like, but how do you have a protagonist in a show who doesn't sing at all? Look, Matt Smith is not a singer. He's a great actor. But he could sing because he had good taste, you know, like, so he was able to sort of pull it off. You know, Ben Walker, who is a much sort of better singer, you know, it's funny because it's like, it's weird. It's like you sort of want Patrick Bateman to be a bad singer. He's got terrible taste in music. Read those reviews that he does in the book of Huey Lewis and Genesis, and they're the world's worst music reviews, and hilariously so. I mean, Brett is not a dummy. Like, he is writing about this character who I think was like his ex-boyfriend or something, who was like this vapid sort of Wall Street guy. But like, he's writing about this character whose taste is so bad that he's going to literally talk about Genesis and really only enjoy the things where after Peter Gabriel left and they really like, you know, started to just record things, you know, digitally. Like, he's like, then they really got, you know, I mean, seriously.
I will say I am an unironic Huey Lewis fan. I saw Harder Rock and Roll. I love the man for what he does, but yeah, he's not Bob Dylan. Like, he's not.
I've played golf with Huey Lewis. He's the nicest guy in the world. I've never listened to an entire Huey Lewis record, nor will I ever. It doesn't matter.
Sports is so good.
Okay, it's probably good. I don't know.
Is there lots of mentions about Les Mis in the show? Because that's all through the book. Yeah, oh, good.
I know, Goose. Wait. Okay, will you hold on? Can you say hi to my friend from Australia and New York? Hold on. Sorry, Inez. Here, my dog.
Hello.
Here, Inez. Can you say hi for 1 second?
Hello.
Come here.
Hello.
Hello, Inez. How are you?
I'm going to be late. I'm going to be
She has
late.
piano lesson.
I'm going to be late.
Oh, well then go. You've got to go to your piano lesson. Go.
But it's across the room. I'm going to be late.
For a very
Go
important
now. Learn your 5-finger pattern.
She's like the white rabbit. She's like the white rabbit.
Be late.
It's gonna be late.
I'm going to be late.
Okay, so go take your care. Go.
Adorable.
Oh my gosh.
Jonathan, when she was, I think, must have been 3 at the time during our last recording. Yeah.
So now she's 5.5.
Wow. Adorable. Yeah, okay. But if you are what you wear, I am magic, because it says magic right there on my
Like
top.
Magic Johnson.
Yes. But also, if you are what you wear, then if I can get my shirt off, I am Iron Man as well.
Oh, nice. Well, now we have Sabbath. We have a good Sabbath reference.
Oh, there you go. Now, I just want to say that there's something that drives me dippy about Wikipedia is that you will get like the original Broadway cast, the original London cast, the 1995 US tour cast, the 1997 US tour cast, the 2004 US tour cast. In that time, you've just had the Australian original cast where you had 5 big names who all have Wikipedia pages. Why does Australia keep getting left off that? Because if you look at the American Psycho page, where's the Australia on there? But you've got an amateur one from Washington.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry, we exist down here in Australia too.
The young director who did the American Psycho at Sydney Opera House.
It was there.
Yeah, no, I understand. He's amazing. He actually was just here in New York a couple weeks ago, and we hung out for the afternoon. And like, he's a really, really talented kid, and I really like him so very much. And I think what happened with the Australian production was that it was one of those things where because of the scheduling, it was like right at the front end of COVID. So what might have been things at Sydney Opera House are limited runs no matter what they are. But I think it got hit by COVID, if I remember correctly.
I think so, yeah. But still, like, put that original Australian cast on. I'm talking to anyone listening at home that does this Wikipedia stuff. I'm sorry, but the original Australian cast is more important than the 5th US tour.
What there's been is the London production, New York production, the Sydney production. Subsequently, was a cool production in Chicago. I didn't see.
Yeah, that's on there, and Washington.
And then did one in DC I did see, and it was amazing. But that was my initial conception. I basically was just like, 10 actors, and you were like in a sort of a black box theater, and there was a woman who was like the music director, but she was just kicking beats and then playing the piano parts, with like cool glasses, like in a DJ booth, and that was the band.
That sounds cool as fuck.
No, I know that's what it was. I mean, I was like, this is how it's supposed to be. It's not like, it's just not meant to be like a pit band. I mean, I love horns and strings as much as the next guy, but it's like, this is not what this is meant to be. Mm-hmm. It's just meant to be somebody who's like, they're at Tunnel, they're at the nightclub, they're a DJ, right? And you have these characters sort of coming in and out of these scenarios in this more or less, I don't know. It's sort of like, I guess what you call like magical realism, for lack of a better word. It's like hyper real, neo real. I don't know. I don't know what the term would be, but yeah, it worked really well in DC. Again, it was like there was only like, I don't know, maybe 100 people in the audience, but it was so, and that's all it would fit, and it was so great because it's just like, what the fuck am I watching? Like I don't think American Psycho works that well as a proscenium event. I think it works well if you're like at the club with these idiots.
Do you think something like a little more immersive, like Here Lies Love tried to do?
Yeah, I mean,
or
yeah.
K-pop?
So, yeah, I mean, the next iterations of this that we're going to do are going to be very, very much more like Sleep No More than they are like, Broadway show. So, yeah.
Okay, well, if the medium is the message, how much is Broadway being stifled by the fact that we have to do Broadway shows in these century 150-year-old theaters that only are tight, that you can only do one kind of proscenium show? There is no flexible space on Broadway.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is my big, I'm going to be very careful with my words right now because I don't want to insult people who I work with and who I admire and respect.
I think we're way past that by this
No,
point.
but the truth is, like, I personally do not like, I don't care if I have the best goddamn seat in the house. I don't want to sit in a chair like this for 2.5 hours, like next to people eating Milk Duds. I don't that's not an experience that I enjoy. I want to be, especially when I'm at my own shows. Luckily, I have the ability to just get up out of the fucking chair and just go walk around because I can say, like, oh, like, I'm just listening to how it sounds on the left side of the house. Yeah. Here's how it sounds on the right side. Like, thank God I can do that, right? But, this idea of me, like, sitting there, like, watching the Britney Spears musical, like, next to, like, 3 porn stars from Las Vegas and being like this for 2.5 hours makes me want to kill myself. I mean, sorry, like, I just...
Male or female porn stars?
They were both.
No, good.
I'd be happy there. I wouldn't be happy with the musical that's on, but I'd happily chat to the porn stars.
Actually, it's way better than, listen, the bangers are fucking bangers, dude. I mean, those things were amazing. It's just Max Martin and Britney, they just don't really know how to write a ballad, and they never did. But the bangers are bangers, and they work really well.
Yeah.
Like, the ballads are just sort of weak sauce. And so you're just like, can we just, like, get through this?
I think Max Martin doesn't understand how to write unironically in major keys. So it's just like, I think that's why ballads are hard for him.
No, it's exactly. I mean, Toxic is like one of the weirdest pop songs ever recorded. It's so
modal.
It's so out there, right?
Yeah.
In the best possible way. I mean, and that's what I admire about it. Like, he's somebody who's able to take this very odd admixture of elements and make it, like, really work as a pop song, right? I mean, like, what? Like, it's like the weirdest. I mean, who would do that in a pop song? It's
Jimmy Webb would do it.
Jimmy Webb would, yeah. Jimmy Webb would. Yeah, no. I mean, there are people who would do that, but not like, I'm sorry, like, no offense to Taylor Swift, but, like,
Yeah.
I don't think that she understands anything outside of diatonic. I mean, I don't know that chromaticism is a word that she knows.
She's living in those caged chords, and that's where she loves to sit. She's living in the caged.
It's a word that I don't fucking know. What?
All the white keys as opposed to white and black keys.
Anything that is just sort of like, it's within a key, and it stays within a key. It never changes from within a key. Look, don't get me wrong. If you get all the blues is an entire genre that's 1-4-5, essentially. If you get it right, you get it right. It's not about, I'm just saying you got to reinvent shit. I don't want to hear fucking G, C, D, and A minor. And I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear it anymore. Like, I'm over it.
Well, especially when it's the same artist. It's like, once you get to your 5th album of writing very similar songs, like, as an artist, don't you want to write a new song?
Yeah,
exactly. And that's why I did make a diss track, which shall never be released.
Oh, please send me this diss track. Please send me this diss track.
But yeah, I did. I'll send it to you guys.
Yes. Oh.
and Taylor is featured in it. I basically just said, like, I was like, hey, little Taylor, like, and they say you've got the drift. I find it a bit confusing because your songs are not that swift. Maybe, try a new progression or a better metaphor. I'd offer you a lesson, but I fear I would get bored.
I love it. Well, anyways, I'm gonna move us on and we're gonna break. So I've got a few questions and then we'll let you go because we've kept you for 2.5 hours now. Oh my god! So we won't ask you many.
We could have watched Furiosa.
Yes. We could have. Anyways, a good skincare routine takes time, so us free radicals are gonna pause, PORES, and drink some virgin blood in the ad break.
Hey there! It's time to get popped on Culture, the official Puzzle Hub pop quiz podcast. And welcome to game number 5. I'm your new host, Matt Young, and for today's special theme, we're going to test your knowledge on musical groups, including bands, boy bands, girl groups, and vocal ensembles. Play against your friends or the clock and see how you go. All right, let's get into it, shall we? Next up, we've got our pop quiz. 10 trivia questions based on today's theme, and maybe a few bonus points if you're lucky. You'll have 5 seconds to guess the answer. So, ready for question number 1? Zach, Taylor, and Isaac are members of which group? Hanson. Of course, they're famous for Mbop. Crash Test Dummies were formed in which country? Canada, or as I like to say, Canada. Third question. Finish this album title. Never mind the bollocks. Here's the... The answer is Sex Pistols. The album is the 2020 debut album by which K-pop group? Blackpink. Jada Pinkett Smith performs lead vocals for which metal band? Wicked Wisdom. Said and Done was the 1995 debut album by which boy band? Boyzone. 7th question. According to Wikipedia, the Beatles were the last band to top the US Billboard end-of-year album charts. In which year did they achieve this? (2001). Which 3 opera singers made up the operatic supergroup The Three Tenors? 1 point for each correct answer. It was Placido Domingo, Jose Carreras, and Luciano Pavarotti. Are you ready for this one? Mesopotamia, Funplex, and Rock Lobster are hits by which band? The B-52s. And finally, in which year did ABBA form? That's right, the year I was born, 1972. And time's up. How did you go on that round? And how'd you go overall? Add up your scores and let us know on Twitter. And be sure to check out our other shows on the Bloop Network, especially Thrash and Treasure, where you'll hear incredible interviews with genuine icons of stage and screen. So until the next game, I've been Matt, you've been Popped on Culture, and I shall see you next time. See ya!
Anyways, we're back with Thrash and Treasure. I'm Aaron, that's Mr. J-Wags, and we are joined by Duncan Sheik. Now, what's one thing that everybody else can do perfectly well, but you suck at?
Okay, well, I mean, I suck at a lot of things. I will tell you, I would be the world's worst accountant.
Yeah. You're a musician. You can only count to 8, right? I actually like odd numbers. I'm actually pretty good at math. I'm pretty good at physics. I can't balance my bank account. You know what I can't do? Any gadgetry technology. Like, I hate gadgetry technology so much. Like, it drives me insane. I like 1176s that were made in 1973 that you plug a XLR cable into, and then you plug that into a whatever. You have a proper microphone in a proper mic pre into a proper compressor. Yes, I use a computer to record things digitally. Sorry, but it goes through like a 1970s chain in the front end, because then I just know it's going to sound like it's supposed to sound. I hate the fact that I have to update my operating system. I don't want to, I have an iWatch. I don't want to know how many steps I took. I don't care. Can you just tell me the time? Can it function just as a watch? I literally went into the Apple store and I was like, can you make this thing function as a watch? Well, couldn't you just buy a watch?
I could, and I did. I literally went to MoMA and I bought a $30 Casio digital watch.
Well, there you go.
Because my iWatch was so annoying to me.
I mean, I figure the iWatch is, you're doing it to get like the heart rate, and if you fall down in the woods, someone can find you. Like, isn't that the point?
I know, but I don't. But it's like if I'm on my bike and I'm riding around, like, and I look at my watch and it's like, oh, you've done 6,000 steps. No, I don't know. I don't care how many steps I've taken. I need to know what time it is so I'm not late for this meeting.
Yeah.
Apple Watch, in the theaters is the worst because when people get text, it lights their watch up.
No, it sucks.
And now it's just like light on the watch, all the show.
Again, the medium is the message. The technology has become more important than like the thing that it's supposed to do for you. You know what I'm saying?
We could talk, Oh. We could talk for 4 hours just on this, on music alone. Music technology and how it's changed music. We could talk for 4 more hours about this.
Of course we could.
Getting back to the theater stuff. All right, so hypothetical for Duncan. You get the chance to work with any current pop rock theater voice you want. Who's the one voice you want to write a role for, and what is the role?
And why is it Jonathan Wagner?
Obviously, second choice would be.
No, John, I mean, have we met in person before? I feel like we have.
We have never met.
No?
We may have met in passing if you came to any School of Rock things, but I was generally kept out of the way.
If you've met Jack Black, you're probably confusing him with Jonathan.
Possibly.
No, but I'm friends with Dude Man who created School of Rock. Sorry, why am I...
Weber?
Mike White.
Mike White?
What?
Mike White.
Mike White? Weber?
No. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I really, really misspoke. It's my friend who did Rock of Ages. I apologize. I don't mean to conflate those two things.
They are often conflated, and I have been cast in both shows, so I don't take offense.
So I'm not the world's worst person.
Oh, no.
What I am doing right this second is making this like 70s covers record, and it sort of ends in sort of total yacht rock territory. It starts like more like Gordon Lightfoot and Jim Croce and, sort of more folky. And then it sort of ends up in, I'm not doing a Toto song, but there's things very much within that milieu. So yes, it's 100% my wheelhouse. Michael McDonald to me is just the ultimate sort of like whatever. He's this American guy, but he's this like incredible keyboard player, and his vocals are just. He's just got the most insane voice, and he's still like I saw him fairly recently at the Carlisle. He still sounds amazing. Michael McDonald is like people don't understand. It's another level.
You'd like to write a role for Michael McDonald?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just want to hang out with the guy and have him sing on a couple songs or something. I don't know. He's just amazing. It's like,
yeah.
So I thought you meant the comedian from Mad TV at first.
No.
Yes.
No.
Similar, but yes.
I keep forgetting I'm not in love anymore. It's like all this like sort of 80s stuff that but you don't really necessarily know who's singing.
You're gonna be there, gonna find me.
Yeah. I mean, he was in the Doobie Brothers for a while. He sang on a bunch of Steely Dan stuff. He was like a session singer, but everybody wanted him because he just had that secret sauce. And so, and he's just killer. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
That is an answer.
Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah. Now, will we ever discover a new genre of music?
Oh.
Amazing question.
Thank you.
I think about this often because I think, as somebody who was born in 1969, I, sort of grew up in a universe where, pop music essentially meant rock music, in some iteration of that, whether it was sort of folky or it was rock or it was hard rock.
There was going to be a guitar in there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, it was guitar music for the most part. I mean, look, the Beatles obviously are a different category because John Martin was there and they were being experimental and they're sort of like in a category by themselves. But I think, if you think about pop music, it's sort of like guitar music, right? And then you had something that happened, well, really it happened in the early 80s, but, then you had the beginning of like hip hop, rap, house music, and techno music in Chicago and Detroit. And then sort of simultaneously, obviously in New York and LA. But, you know, you had this sort of weird thing of like people just like who had a drum machine and a synthesizer and some turntables, and they sort of created a whole new set of genres out of very simple materials, right? And then what happened, I think, subsequently, this is the musicologist in me talking now, is that like then you just have sort of like just weird combinations of those things. It's like rock music with a folk aspect, or hip hop with a country aspect, or, but, you know, it's like you just have these sort of like fusions. It's like going to an Asian restaurant and they've got like sushi and Thai food and kung pao chicken. I'm like, this is gonna fucking suck because you're not doing anything right. You know, I mean, do you know
Do one thing and do it well rather than be master of none, right?
Yes, like stay in your goddamn lane. Now that sounds like a very curmudgeonly thing to say, but to answer your question, I think that watching the beginning of the Olympics, there was the sequence in the library with the sort of, you know, again, I'm not sure if it was John Adams or Steve Reich or who it was, but there was some very sort of like what I would call late 20th century sort of minimalist classical music. That was really cool. So, you know, there's people like Nico Mulhey, and I think even like Sufjan Stevens sort of traffics a little bit in that world. But I think that there's some iteration of like pop music that has a sort of more, I don't want to say classical music because that word gets very misused, but there's sort of like a composer driven pop.
Symphonic?
Yeah, I mean it could be symphonic, but it wouldn't necessarily need to be. It could you know, I mean like a lot of those early Steve Reich records are just, it's like literally like just 3 drums, you know, or it's like, you know, a couple of vibraphones or, you know, marimbas or whatever. I don't care. But I think something that's more sort of formal in a way could be really interesting, where it's not just like, oh, you know, here's a pop song. It's E minor, G and D and B minor, or whatever. I don't know. It's like, it's something that's a little more formal and a little more sort of like where the 3 minutes is not just a repetition of a set of chord progressions, but it's like something's actually happening over the course of the 3 minutes. That's changing and compelling and being in narrative. Now, look, I like a hook as much as the next guy. I like, you know, With or Without You is a great fucking pop song. Yeah. I'm not criticizing the idea of having 4 chords and repeating it over and over again. I mean, fucking James Brown has some songs that are they're just 1 chord, you know, and he just fucking hits it, you know, for, you know, 4 minutes and it fucking killer. So I'm not saying you can't do that, but like for me personally, like just as a listener and as an experiencer of music, I'm interested in harmony, and I'm interested in how can you find mystery in harmony that is like, oh, like I've never heard, like it's enigmatic. I've never heard that before, but it's beautiful. It's mysterious and beautiful.
The problem I keep coming back to as a composer is just that I keep rediscovering things that have already existed. It's like I definitely I rewrote Mozart a couple nights ago, and it was beautiful. But then I'm like, oh fuck, that's this thing.
I think that's okay though. Well, first of all, it's public domain.
Bam, there we go.
Second of all, if you can rewrite Mozart well, do it, mate. I mean, that's what Picasso said. He said, you know, good artists borrow. Great artists steal.
Yeah, I've heard that. Okay, now what inanimate objects make the best instruments?
So last night I was recording a song that shall remain nameless on my 70s covers album. Doug, my drummer, was here, and he was like, oh, let me, he like took a piece of paper from my printer that's over there. And he's like, just let me do a track that's just like me playing with this piece of paper. And it's super fucking cool.
Well, maybe that's how we create new genres of music, is that we literally have to create new instruments. Like you were saying with hip hop. It's like, can we really create a new genre of music if with the tools we've always been using?
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, all right. So real talk. Sorry,
Yeah.
I know that we're going on way too long.
We're in it. We're so far in it at this point. Let's fucking do this.
Yeah. I was at Sundance one year, and I would often go there just like because I have like not even because I was performing, but I just was like wanted to go snowboarding and see some movies. And I have some friends who are sort of tangentially in the movie business. And so I would like go there. And then they asked me to do this thing one time where there was a bunch of film composers there who were like big guns, like, you know, fancy LA film composer people. And they did this thing one afternoon, and there was like, I don't know, 200 or 300 people in the audience. And the mission was this, like, you have to walk on stage more or less unprepared and teach a piece of music to the 300 person audience. And you've got 5 minutes, go. It's sort of like, it's like improv, but you know,
I love it
for musicians, right?
Yeah.
I was there with my friend David Poe, and he had the very smart idea that if you take two iPhones and you call each other and you put them together, like they start like making feedback and stuff, you know? So like there was a microphone there. So he had, you know, so he like called me and I picked up the phone and then we got the feedback going. So there was like a tone that was like happening. And then I was like, okay, this part of the audience, you guys, you know, sing this note, you know, let's call it whatever. Let's call it A, you know, low, you know, 220. I don't know. And then this part of the audience, do you have a piece of paper? Like make this rhythm with it, right? And then this part of the audience, here, you sing this melody, right? And then this part of the audience, you sing this counter melody, right? And then just do it randomly and see what happens, you know? And it was like weirdly, like sort of beautiful. I mean, it was fucked up, but it was cool what happened.
But it's also like that's an amazing concept for a theatrical event because that is something that's unlike anything. But what happens if instead of I work at Second City, we do improv all the time, including a lot of musical improv. But what if we get to the point where someone who comes out, like 5 musicians who trust themselves, and we just hand out like this section gets paper bags, this section gets popcorn tubs, this section gets a plastic ring, and it's just like I'm gonna shout stuff at you, you're gonna shout stuff back, we're gonna record this, and at the end of the night we've done an album, and then what happened tonight will never happen again. Like sort of a weird Grateful Dead thing, but as an audience member, you're a part of it.
You're a part of it. I love it.
Let's do this.
To me,
call Weber.
Like that is some of the most exciting shit that can happen because not only are you an audience member and like hopefully you're appreciating what it sounds like, but you're part of it. Yeah. How cool is that? I mean, trust me, I sit there, I make music all day. Like when I go see a concert, I don't want to have to go play guitar. You know, people are like, oh, let's do karaoke. I'm like, no, I don't know. I'm sorry, I do this all day for a living.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Gynecologists have that problem too. Sorry.
But I do think the idea of like having the audience as part of the event could be really cool in a way.
As long as it's properly labeled.
I know I showed like a story concept idea that you could do that with, that I've actually like literally was sitting there yesterday developing it and developing characters, and that would be absolutely perfect for it. I didn't know if it was going to be a play or what, but now I know it's going to be a musical and people, the audience, are going to be a part of it.
Yeah, and then you don't have to pay musicians $2,000 a week. They're just the people who are paying you.
Yeah.
Fascinating concept. I hope 802 doesn't hear from you on this one.
Trust me, I've been deep into it with 802 when we did American Psycho because it was supposed to just be one keyboard player and a computer.
Yeah.
And we were at the Stone.
I was wondering about that.
And so so they were like, no, you need at least 3 other musicians. So at the last minute, I had to like create like guitar parts and drum parts, and poor like Marcus, and I mean it was just like he was just like playing against like beats. It's like, it just doesn't, it was so counterproductive and so stupid. But listen, I want to have a 17-25 piece orchestra whenever I can, but in this case it was just meant to be a DJ.
Yeah, it's the art. The art should come first, not a union rule there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, look, I'm very pro-union. Don't get me wrong. I'm very pro-union.
I see why the rules are there, but it's also like in cases like this, there should be exceptions that are able to be made.
Yeah.
Like shows where you have supernumeraries who only come in for like the last 5 minutes of the show can get a lower rate. This can easily be a thing where it's like, hey, I'm going to use this guitar player for one song. Yeah. Can I give him a slightly different rate? And then he can go play a gig after this when like he can leave.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Right. He plays one song in Act 1 and he's out of there by 9:00 and he can go do whatever he wants.
I know a lot of guitarists who would take that gig in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I just think, they're very hidebound in some way, and I understand. I know the provenance of that, and I think it's important to protect working musicians. It is very important, but it's like, let's figure out a way to make it work economically for everybody.
Yeah, and also to bring the experience into the 21st century, as you were mentioning. Like, we have a 19th century experience that we're trying to sell as a luxury in the 21st century.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, again, Lin-Manuel is a friend of mine, love the guy. But like when I went to see Hamilton, and David is like, is playing like a fucking, $1,000 Roland fake piano. Like I'm just like, that makes me insane. Like, sorry, get a goddamn, like, it's Hamilton. You're making $500 million a year. Like, get a goddamn piano in there.
Speaking of which, how is your 113-year-old piano?
What?
Should see this thing. I know. Should see this.
It is. Yeah, it is.
What?
It's good. You could probably hear it in the background because Inez is playing it right now.
Oh.
To be honest, it needs a bit of a tuning right now. I think it's been about 2 or 3 months since it's been tuned. So I like when it gets out. It's very frustrating to me. So anyway.
Yeah.
That's why they go with the Roland on Hamilton.
Well, no, I mean, that's okay. So no, but you're right about that. Is that, if you just have some digital piece of crap, it's always completely in tune, but then you don't have a real piano,
But it's just like, I mean, you know how weird, like, you can't control humidity in a Broadway house. It's just like, I can imagine in like the middle of a heat wave trying to keep your piano in tune with an electric background. Like, oof, there'd be some microtones.
In Spring Awakening, there was they tried to do that. The producers went to me and they were like, is it okay if we use a digital piano? I said, it's a show set in 1891 in Germany. I'm not going to have a fucking digital piano. Are you nuts? Are you guys fucking crazy? So we got a Steinway upright that was sort of like mostly era appropriate. It might have been a little 10 years later, but it was,
seems close.
It looked like an upright piano that you would have seen in Germany in 1891. And it's like, it had character, it's a Steinway, it's a nice piano. In fact, I own it. I gave it to the Broadway Museum just because I have too many fucking pianos.
That's a first world problem if I've ever heard one.
Yeah. But anyway, but it's got character. And yes, it would go out of tune. But it's also like, that's why you have a piano, because it's like, it's real. It's like authentic. If you know how to mic it, it might be some tuning issues here and there. But it's like when I saw, what was that British... Anyway, it's really a play, but there was like a couple songs in it. It was like about a bunch of schoolboys.
History Boys?
History Boys. Yeah. It's not a musical, but there are these sequences where the kid plays piano and they sing these things. And it's actually like, and it's a real piano on stage. And it's like really beautiful. If it had been a digital piano, it would have annoyed me. But that's maybe I'm being very persnickety.
Well, to go back to even earlier in the conversation, like the drums hit back, like a piano. There's something physically different about vibrating a 1-ton piece of wood with your playing, as opposed to like, if I hit this is going to hit a thing, which is going to tell a computer that I'm hitting it this hard, and it's going to hit this. Like, it's functionally the same, and I understand why you do it. But yeah,
I like technology. I do. Like, I use it all the time. But it's like, use it for, like, nothing sounds better than a TR-909 drum machine. I mean, because it is a TR-909. It's a very specific. I don't want to make a TR-909 sound like an actual drummer. You can't do it. It sucks. If you want a drummer, get a fucking drummer.
Get it out.
Yes. Yeah, we've almost gone for 3 hours, Duncan. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. So
we should probably start to wrap.
Ask the final question on the script there, Jonathan, and we'll round it up.
Oh yeah. Okay, Duncan. If you could quarantine with any Muppet for 2 weeks, who are you in lockdown with?
So I played Gonzo in the Muppet musical myself. So it would be weird. So I guess it would just have to be obvious. And I'll, me and Miss Piggy we would smash all night.
She would probably smash you out of the room for saying that. She'd go, hey, yeah.
And I think Duncan's into it, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
He likes them thick with some karate skills. That's what we want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be like an adventure, you know.
Yeah. Who would you have, Jonathan? Who would you want to?
Oh, for me, I'd probably want some member of Dr. Teeth's band, because we'd probably just like get us like, if it's like we're just for 2 weeks, it's like, all right, I've got all the Rush live albums and some weed. Do you want to hang? Yes.
Yeah.
Me and Dr. Teeth, Janice. Me and Janice. That's what we'd be doing.
Yeah.
Me and Janice would just hang out.
That's exactly what I said to Kirk Thatcher, one of the Muppet directors.
Bam. Yep.
Was she based on Janis Joplin?
I think she was supposed to look like Joni Mitchell.
Oh, Joni Mitchell.
But then but they called her Janice.
Yeah.
They called her Janis. So that's why I'm confused. I mean, I think, you know, it could be cool to have the Swedish chef, because then you just, you know, you get it.
You get the food, but
What are the two curmudgeons?
Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah. I mean, they could be amusing.
Just sit and talk shade with Waldorf all day.
Yes. I would
Somebody just talk shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I can see that.
These just completely like critical, like annoying curmudgeons. Like, I find that stuff really funny, actually.
Yeah, me too.
Well, clearly we've been sitting here talking for 3 hours about our opinions on things. Clearly you hate discussing things and telling fun stories.
Sorry, I didn't mean to drone on. So I actually apologize.
This has been amazing. We have loved this, but it's just like I the bladder was prepped for 90 minutes, so it's like that's why I had to take a break.
Go to the toilet. I'll finish up.
I'm shocked that I haven't had to go to the bed, but I will.
I do. This is the size of my coffee, Duncan. It's literally the size of my head.
That's a lot of coffee.
I didn't drink it all, but
I had an espresso early this morning, and so I sort of got it all out of my system. So I guess that, you know.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. It was such an honor. Like,
this has been delightful. It's so wonderful to meet you. Yeah,
it really has.
This has been great.
We'll go hang and we'll talk about Rush and Toto, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, and when you're in Melbourne, tell me all the best stories that you can't tell me here.
Yeah, I actually need to go to Canberra because, you know, I've got some politicians that I need to talk to. Anyway, we'll talk about that later.
Do let me know if you want to come out to Brooklyn and see Second City, New York at any time. We are having a blast out there.
I would actually 100% want to do that.
Yeah.
Let me know. Aaron has all my info. I'm also at Mr. JWags on Insta if you want to meet me there. But anytime you want to talk.
Aaron, will you just like...
Yeah,
should we?
Yes.
We'll connect. Okay.
God, how am I doing all this connecting of Broadway people? I'm literally in Melbourne, Australia, people. Goodness me.
Well, clearly, he only meets people from Rock of Ages, not School of Rock.
Apparently, Melbourne is the coolest place on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
At 3 Celsius. Yeah.
Anytime you want to come back and just chat, even if we've got another guest, Duncan, just to hear the stories and your insight and all that. Truly, don't feel bad about going overtime, because it's our job to feel bad when we go overtime. So, and if you're not feeling bad, then my conscience is clean.
Yeah, I can't do any recording because Inez has her piano lesson. So this is all I have to do is like hang out with you guys.
Like, what's your favorite Rush live album, and why is it Rush in Rio?
Well, I mean, it's really Exit Stage Left, but I mean, because I think that's sort of the seminal live Rush album. I think. I don't know. I mean, I may be wrong, but
that was the Moving Pictures tour, right?
Exit Stage Left was
right after Moving Pictures.
Okay. I mean, Moving Pictures. It's like one of the most perfect records ever made. But
no, best side one in rock history. I will stand by that. Best side one.
No, it's Moving Pictures. What About Me? A classic Australian song. Have you not ever heard of that?
No, I told you. I've only in excess.
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah. What about me? It isn't fair. That's a classic.
I want to have the Guinness Book of World Records longest podcast episode ever.
Yeah.
All right, but you got to prep.
You should have your own show. That's what you should do. And if you ever want to produce that, come to me and I will produce it. It would just make it such a fascinating listen. It really would.
Yeah, it might. Yeah, it might get me into. I'm already in a lot of trouble. I feel like after this 3 hours, so it might not be so good.
Yes.
If anything you really regret, let us know and we'll make sure to get it out.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
We'll let you go. You go.
All right. Thanks, you guys. So sorry to keep you.
No, please don't apologize.
It was our pleasure. Goodbye, sir.
Talk to you both soon.
Have fun.
Bye.